going on, Vikings fans? Welcome to the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, I want to talk about the latest NFC North news, and a lot is coming out after the Bears-Packers game. Could Matt LaFleur be on the hot seat? And then I do want to talk about the Bears, as they look like a problem, not only for obviously this year, but for years to come down the line. And then we do have an update around Brian Flores that we'll touch on the back half of today's show. But first off, I want to give a massive shout-out to Eric Kendricks. He had the game-winning play against the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, and a guy that was on the street 2 months ago. Watching that game, number 43 was flying around the football field. I still remember his 2019 season with the Minnesota Vikings and the Mike Zimmer defense, that team that went into New Orleans wild card weekend as a 9-point underdog and completely stifled that Drew Brees offense. Eric Kendricks was the biggest reason for that. So it's awesome seeing him making plays. I mean, this guy was making Instagram reels early on this season about the Minnesota Vikings. So first off, big shout out to Eric Kendricks. Played some good football yesterday. But let's talk about the Packers news here. Ian Rappaport tweeting this out earlier on this morning. After a lot of conversations on if Matt LaFleur could be on the hot seat after the Packers completely collapsed against the Chicago Bears, well, it's looking like that won't be the case. Rapp saying the Packers and coach Matt LaFleur will meet shortly after the season ends to discuss extending his contract, with both sides hoping for a great outcome. So it's not official that Matt LaFleur won't be fired, but it's sounding like that will be the case. And I will say on the Matt LaFleur front, if you could have written up a script before that Packers-Bears game where it's like, hey, Matt LaFleur gets fired if this happens, that would have been it. You're up 21-3 at halftime. You have a big-time lead in the fourth quarter, and the offense completely goes numb in the third quarter, where it's just 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out, and then some questionable timeout usage at the end of that game. He couldn't get his offense going against a Bears defense that is, one, not that good, and also lost TJ Edwards in that game to a big-time injury. So I do think 100% of that loss is on Matt LaFleur. I thought Jordan Love played a good game. Yes, Jeff Hafley, their defensive coordinator, he deserves some blame as well. But Matt LaFleur, 1-5 in his last 6 playoff games. I mean, times are not good in Green Bay. But I say all that to say this: I don't think the Packers should fire him. And also, that kind of gets me back to, I had a take early on in the season about Kevin O'Connell after the Seahawks game where I said the Vikings should consider firing him. I take that back. I just think, the same thing that could be said about the Vikings firing O'Connell, where it's like, hey, who could you go get? Now, the Vikings have a better option than Brian Flores and a guy like Jeff Hafley, in my opinion, in Green Bay. But let's just say they end up firing LaFleur and they go out and get a John Harbaugh and then just completely switch up that connection with Jordan Love and whoever that new offensive play caller would be. So I think the Packers just kind of take a deep breath, don't fire them, because you're going to have these two guys coming back next season, Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft. Like, I almost think the Packers, even though Packers fans would disagree with this, like, they should probably deserve some credit on them just making the playoffs with Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft getting hurt. I will say they did not win a game without Micah Parsons this season, which is telling. They also lost Edgerrin Cooper, in my opinion, one of the better football players in the NFL during that Bears game. But I don't think the Packers, where it's going to be like a complete free fall, they're going to have two of the best players in the NFL coming back next season, in Micah and Tucker Kraft. But I will say, as a Vikings fan, even though I wasn't happy about the Bears winning that one, it was awesome to see the Packers collapse on Saturday night. But if you guys could, hit that subscribe button today. We are closing in here on 69,000 subscribers. Just need 76 more. First off, shout out to all the real ones who have hit that subscribe button over the last couple of months. It's probably going to be a pretty crazy offseason here for the Vikings over the next couple of weeks. So if you guys want to stay up to date on everything around your favorite football team, help me out. Help us reach our next milestone here of 69,000 subs. All right, and I'm going to be sick to my stomach during this segment on today's show, but it's just the truth, and it's how I'm feeling. The Chicago Bears are an absolute problem, and it starts off with their head coach, Ben Johnson. Even though I didn't think he called the best game against the Green Bay Packers, I thought he got way too aggressive early on in the game. I thought he got a little too cute in the red zone on a couple of play calls, but this dude, Ben Johnson's absolutely unbelievable. The culture he has set in Chicago, a lot of people were saying, oh, maybe they are just the 2022 Vikings at halftime, which they do give similar vibes where they're just pulling wins, out of their you-know-what. But, I mean, he just set the culture there in Chicago. He's an elite offensive play caller, and the difference between him and KOC is he likes to commit to the run. He will almost be too committed to the run, but also just let his quarterback, when he kind of gets rolling, which Caleb did in that second half, he'll just let him throw the ball all over the lot. And also, Kevin O'Connell now, the only coach in the NFC North to not have a playoff win. But the biggest reason why I think the Bears are a problem is because of Caleb Williams. Now, Caleb Williams, he is not a perfect quarterback right now by any means. But the thing that scares me so much about Caleb is he obviously has the wow throws. Like the 4th and 8 throw, season on the line, rolling to your left, has a little jump throw, flicks it over the top, hits Roma Dunze in stride. That was absolutely disgusting. And the thing with Caleb that scares me is obviously he still struggles with just the easy ones. Every once in a while, he'll just sail one over a receiver's head, gets them behind the 8 ball. I think that's a fixable issue. So once he fixes that, and you have the wow plays, we obviously know he's got some of the best escapability in the NFL right now. Once he shores that up, this guy's going to take a massive jump. And he does kind of remind me of a guy like Josh Allen, where Josh Allen had like the wow plays early on in his career, and then once he fixed his technique, he fixed his throwing motion, we really saw Josh Allen hit another stride. And I think the same can be said about Caleb Williams. And then also, how about their tight end, Colston Loveland? I was huge on this guy. Now, the main reason why I was big on him is because when I was going back, and obviously when the Vikings were heavily invested in J.J. McCarthy, going back and watching all that Michigan tape, this guy just popped off the screen, and he did that for not only last night, for the last month of the season. He reminds me of like a prime Travis Kelce, a prime Shannon Sharp. This guy's just a matchup nightmare, and he is 21 years old. And you think about all the dynasties in the NFL, and by no means I'm talking about the Bears being a dynasty, but you got 3 things. You just think about the last 2. You got a great head coach, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid. You got a great quarterback, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and you got a superstar tight end in Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski. I think Colston Loveland is on that level. So the Vikings, they're going to be playing behind the 8 ball for a little bit here in the division. And also, I think you can make the argument for the Vikings right now that you have the worst head coach, GM, and quarterback in the division. I think, no doubt, you have the worst GM and quarterback in the division. Like, I'm still taking Goff, Love, and Caleb, obviously, over J.J. McCarthy, and you're taking all 3 of those front offices over Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and crew. Now, you maybe could argue that Kevin O'Connell is better than Dan Campbell, maybe even better than a Matt LaFleur. I think Ben Johnson does get the top notch in the NFC North as it stands right now. But, man, it is just tough sledding to be a Vikings fan because we had such high hopes heading into the season, and now you're looking at it where it's like, do we possibly have the worst coach, the worst GM, the worst quarterback in the NFC North? I think you can definitely make that argument. If you guys want to know your thoughts down below. Are the Bears a massive problem? I think they are. I hate giving the Bears love. They're actually one of my most hated teams in the NFL. Sometimes I hate them even more than the Green Bay Packers. So it's definitely tough for me to say. But you guys want to know your thoughts. Are the Bears a massive problem? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Now we'll dive into the latest from Brian Flores here in a second. But today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. And whether you're starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops, and Prize Picks lets you take control. Now, Prize Picks has a brand new feature called Early Payouts. So if your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. You guys can find your community on Prize Picks. With the new social feeds feature, you can share your Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us here at Vikings Now and tail or fade our picks with just one click. So hit that link in the comment section and description of today's show and download the Prize Picks app today. Plug in promo code CLNS, get hooked up with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. But shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, Kevin Seifert tweeting this out, giving an update on the Brian Flores situation, saying Brian Flores, among 15 candidates for the Ravens, are scheduled to interview for the first head coaching opening in 2 decades, clearly casting a wide net. There's no doubt they are. Now, I do think from a Vikings front, we should be a little encouraged with the Niners getting a big win yesterday over the Philadelphia Eagles, where their defense, with just getting completely depleted with injuries, they played some great football. And I do think if you're Baltimore, an ideal combo would be Robert Saleh and Mike McDaniel. Now, I will say you could also make the same argument where it's like, hey, if they do hire Flores, what if they bring a guy like Josh McCown or even Mike McDaniel to come in and call plays? But I do think Flores, in terms of like the top 5 candidates for the Ravens, I think he's still in that top 5. But I think Robert Saleh, if you had to ask a Ravens fan, he might be number 1 right now. Now, obviously, it didn't work out with the Jets, but nobody works out with the Jets. So I think Saleh, he would be a great choice for Baltimore. And One good news or note on the Flores situation is that the Ravens have been the only team to request Flores so far, which I think is a little interesting. So obviously, if I was another team and I was calling the shots for another organization, I would give Flores another chance because I just think his defensive scheme is so unique and he's got that Belichickian style in his culture where it's like, hey, no nonsense. It's all about football. But I just think this is a good news for Vikings fans because also there's been no buzz with the Raiders yet. They haven't requested him yet, which is a bit of a shocker because you were hearing that the Las Vegas Raiders were the front runners to hire Brian Flores with their head coaching search. But let's just say maybe they go Jesse Minter as their head coach and the Ravens end up going Robert Saleh. Then there's really no other options for Brian Flores out there, which would be a huge benefit to Vikings fans. I hope Flores eventually becomes a head coach down the line in his tenure in the NFL, but maybe that's after the Vikings go on a couple of deep playoff runs. And, if there is ever a situation where Flores is not the DC for the Minnesota Vikings and he takes another DC job, that just tells me the Wolves aren't serious about winning. Because you could easily make this guy the assistant head coach. You can make him the highest paid coordinator in NFL history. Why not? It doesn't go against the cap space. It's just their own money. So for fans saying, oh, I don't want to give Flores $7-8 million, I don't care. It's not our money. I would give Flores $30 million per year just to keep him as the defensive coordinator with the Vikings because I'll hammer this point all offseason. The Vikings defense will take a massive step back if Flores leaves. The personnel level is not as high as other teams in the NFL, probably around middle of the pack, but with Flores calling the shots and these players who are specific scheme fits like Van Ginkel, like Josh Metellus, if Flores leaves, I'm not saying Van Ginkel will fall off the face of the earth, but he won't be the same guy with whoever they end up bringing in. So Flores, the Wilfs, hopefully they can get a deal done, and hopefully they make him the highest paid coordinator as he deserves in the NFL history. But if you guys made it to the end, appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Another video coming out later today on the channel, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But appreciate all of you guys watching. As always, let's go Vikes.